So when you're coming into the virtual world, you need to think about how you're going to shape the culture of the school. What opportunities can you create? And do you thrive in that change?
Welcome to the Please Raise Your Virtual Hand podcast. We are so delighted to dive into the exciting, challenging, and sometimes messy world of virtual learning, where nothing is impossible and redefining student success is possible. Low Country Education Consortium aims to open up new possibilities for parents, students, and our business and industry partners as we fundamentally transform learning for students. We will hold your virtual hand throughout this series, where we will discuss the world of virtual learning and how we are preparing our students for college, careers, and jobs that haven't been created yet. Virtual learning may be new to you, but it's here to stay. So, let's get started. Hello, I'm Amy McKenzie, and I'm here with Matt Novielli, and we'll be your hosts throughout this series. Please raise your virtual hand. We are so excited that you've joined us for this episode. Today, we'll be getting to know more about Matt, who he is, why he became a teacher, and we'll even get to take a peek into his virtual classroom. So, Matt, to start off, we'd all love to hear about your background and your years of experience in education.
Thank you for having me, Amy. I really appreciate being here. I started teaching now for about 12 years. I did 5 in special education and 7 in general education. And this is my second year teaching virtually. I have my bachelor's degree in elementary education from St. Joseph's University and a graduate degree in special education from Georgian Court University.
So, you have been in education a while. Now, I'm really interested in hearing more about your journey to becoming a teacher. I know that a lot of teachers will tell me that they have always known, or they knew from a very young age that they wanted to be a teacher. Personally, that was not my experience. I didn't even know until I was in college. So, Matt, when did you know that you were meant to be a teacher?
Yeah, everybody kind of has their own story and their journey that led them to teaching. And it's usually a very powerful story. And for me, it was something very similar to you, where I kind of grew into that field and not really sure that I wanted to start out that way. But what I did know was that I loved helping other people. And my story basically begins when I was in high school. I had a really, really close family member that passed away, and I was having an extremely tough time during my sophomore year of high school. And when I was going into school, my teachers, they were the ones that picked me up, and I really made a strong connection with my school psychology teacher. And when I was sitting with her, she would continuously talk with me, and she helped me understand what I was going through and helped me learn how to learn. In those times where it's tough to deal with stuff, you have a backseat for education sometimes. And she helped me to bring it back to the forefront and help me understand why it was important to deal with all these things in life while I was still learning. And I thought that was one of the most interesting things to learn. So as I went through the rest of my high school career, I started to help other kids, and I helped them dealing with similar situations. And in college, I decided I want to do something for psychology as well. And I started out in school psychology, and they had us do some internships within the school. And that's when I kind of realized that truly I just love being with the other students. I love to engage with them and talk with them. And I love to help them learn how to learn, just like it was done for me. I craved building those relationships with the students, watching them grow. And that eventually led me into special education and general education.
Wow, that is such a great story. I'm wondering, did you always teach elementary level, or did you do special ed for other grade levels?
Yeah, so that's great, because I started in high school too, because again, you have these concepts in your mind where you want to be and what you think is going to be best. And when real life takes over, I realized that I love the initial beginning start to school. I loved helping the younger children begin their journey in school in a positive and exciting way, and helping them to engage in class and learn how to learn from an early age. So I didn't get to know that until I was in high school and college, where everybody learns differently. And I thought back to myself, if someone was there to teach me that along the way, it would have changed my whole rest of my educational career.
Wow, I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Now, I can bet that when you were going through all of these experiences, you probably didn't realize that you were going to end up in a virtual classroom, did you?
No, absolutely not. If you can go back a few years ago, that'd probably be on the least thought idea in my mind that I could possibly think of.
I bet. Could you tell us what was it like for you when COVID started and the whole world pretty much was thrown into this emergency online learning situation?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you hear a lot of stories about. And you hear positive and negative stories, and what it really comes down to for me is the most important feature in my classroom, whether it's virtual or face to face, is building relationships with students. And the most interesting thing that I found was no matter if we were on a computer, no matter if we were in meeting face to face, whatever the case was, by having that strong relationship with the kids, there was no difference. They still worked just as hard for me, if not harder, and they still want to succeed just as much. And that was one of the things that I realized, that transition between going face to face and remote learning was going to be a different ballgame. So there was just different techniques that were involved with the same students and the same community building and relationships that we had in place.
Now, could you speak more about those techniques? Because I know a lot of virtual teachers will say that they have to be very purposeful about building relationships. So could you give us an example of how you do that with your virtual students?
Yeah, and I will say, what, speaking back on when we started, if we're looking at that COVID time to now, we really entered a frame of remote learning, right? And in remote learning, we tried to replicate everything that was going on in the classroom. And that's why we saw so many different stories between people that were having success and people that were having failures, was because we were trying to replicate something that wasn't there. So in virtual learning, it's not that replication of the classroom. What we're doing is we're enhancing and expanding on that experience. So we're using that in a positive sense. So we have that ability to use and apply all these resources. We can collaborate and interact with each other in ways that we haven't before. So we have those same types of community building, but we just do them in different facets now. So not only did it help me as a teacher, it helped the students grow, and they had outcomes that were far greater than I thought. We were able to work and engage with families, especially with virtual learning compared to that remote learning. With virtual learning, we're engaging with not only the students every single day, but the families as well. So when all stakeholders are involved, and we constantly discuss and talk with parents how their day is going, there's the learning coach is sitting with them. They know what's happening throughout the whole day. So we have these revolving conversations with each other that makes every stakeholder a part of their education. So when you were thinking about specifically that cell and community building, like you're saying, that's something that like I said before, I hold near and dear to my heart. I wanted to make it the same, if not better, with those same social interactions and community as I experienced during that remote time. When we talk about our virtual school and what we're doing in school, we know that you need, whether you're in face-to-face or virtual, you need to have a really, really, really strong foundation. And to do that, we set the tone every single day. So we know what students are going to expect. They crave that consistency, just like they do in person, same thing online. So when we set that tone and we model those expectations for those kids, they're able to see us succeed. They're able to see us struggle. They're able to see every part of our emotions just as they normally would. So when we build on these classroom activities, we have a time that the learning coach, the students, the teacher, we all get to talk and discuss information together. So when we have that and we're able to talk and contact each other constantly, we start to build these relationships. So personally, to answer your question about how I create that community and collaboration within the class, it's getting to know the kids on a one-on-one level and understanding I keep a log and a journal of all the information and fun stories. I do the same thing in face-to-face as virtual. If a student has a baseball game, I jot it down in that log. If I ask them on Friday, how did their game go? Were they the pitcher? How many strikes did they throw? Same type of attention that I would give a student face-to-face, I'm doing virtually as well. But this time I'm able to bring in other resources. We can go and we can watch some film clips of their games. We can see their scores, their stats. We can bring up all these fun things that normally we couldn't do within the classroom. We have that freedom to engage and look at all different types of content. And especially when we're talking about interests of students, by learning virtually, we have the opportunity to pull in content that we know. If I know that student loves baseball and I'm teaching a math lesson about statistics, that's something I can bring in now for that student. And I can have them use those adapted lessons that bring in real life experiences for them that they can engage and learn from.
Matt, I love how you break it down by saying, yeah, face-to-face and virtual, they're very different. And that's something that we all have to embrace. I actually have a sound clip that I want to play. You talked about setting the tone in your classroom. And I have had the privilege of observing Matt in his virtual classroom. There is this really wonderful thing we do at Low Country Virtual School called the pineapple chart. And if you've never heard of a pineapple chart, it is pretty much where teachers have this document and they can invite other teachers into their classrooms virtually, either live or by recording a lesson. And this is one thing that Low Country Virtual teachers do to learn from each other, to share out resources, and to celebrate the wonderful things that they're doing in their classrooms. Now, I have been fortunate enough to watch this video, and I've watched it quite a few times. And I'm going to play a short clip, about 30 seconds for you guys. And this is one activity that Matt does to start out his class.
Now, all of these pictures are going to talk to you about some sort of a rock. So how are you feeling today? How's your morning going? How's your afternoon beginning? We have number one, The Rock, who is a wrestler and an actor. He is nothing but happy right there, and he's excited to see you for the day. Number two, sometimes we all carry on some heavy things on our shoulders, and we got a lot of work to do, and we have some tough days, but sometimes we feel complete, and we finish our task, and we feel good about it. That's number two. For number three, we have the...
All right, so I'm not going to play the whole clip, but Matt, could you explain to us what that activity was and why do you choose to start your class like that?
Sure. So that basically what that activity is a 5-minute introduction to the lesson. And we have 4 or 5 animated GIFs that have something to do with the content. So in that case, what you heard, we were talking about rocks and different materials from the Earth's surface. And each of those pictures represented a different feeling or emotion. So we had that engagement with how the students were doing with the content material. And basically the kids were able to put a number up in the chat of how they were feeling for the day. And then I invited randomly selected students to go ahead and tell me why they chose that number, what their day was like, and really just gave them an opportunity to start off class. Going through that whole lesson, there's a lot of information that can be brought out from just those simple numbers being thrown up in the chat. I can see which students were having a great start to their day, which students had a ton of energy, excited for the lesson, what students maybe had some personal things they were dealing with, and what students were maybe just exhausted and needed some sort of engagement to get ready for the rest of the content and material that we're going to go into. But it also gives them a chance to have a voice in the class. So I don't like starting my lessons with just, here's some material and I'm going to teach it to you. I like to have them take part in their education. They have an opportunity to sit there and to tell me how their day is going or explain what their day is going like in order to learn the material.
So if I were to continue playing that sound clip for our audience, they would hear a bunch of your students volunteering to talk to you and talk to their classmates about how their day was going, how they were feeling. And the first time I watched that lesson, I was so blown away with how willing your students are to speak up and take part in the community building that you have going on in your lesson. Did that take time to teach them how to be part of your virtual community?
Yeah, so, the cool thing about working with students is that they're always ready to talk and discuss their day. Just as many teachers know, they're excited to share everything with you, but this gives them a funnel of that sharing. So it allows that to take place within the context of the lesson that we're learning. And again, by acknowledging each student, every time the student gets into the class, I'm always welcoming them by their name. discussing how their day was leading after class, maybe check in with them during office hours. So it's that continuous relationship building that really lets them feel comfortable in class. When they can see that modeled every single day, if I'm telling them, hey guys, woo, it was been a crazy day. I just got in from a meeting now and we're going right into class here. And I feel like a whirlwind right now. That's some real emotions, and I'm sharing that with them, and it helps them to feel more comfortable in turn to share it with me. And going into that clip, if it goes into the whole clip, you can see that one of the students, her grandfather was in the hospital, and that was all she was thinking about through leading up to our class. And it takes time. So I know that if she's having a tough day, it might not be the best time to pressure her or push her for some more answers. And I might give her some time to breathe and help her, guide her along, and check back in with her later on during the lesson, because maybe her focus wasn't fully there for what that lesson was. And then I have some students that truly loved those pictures, and they can relate to them on their own personal life. And I know that that's a great time to engage with them even more. So when we have that modeling of the expectations throughout the whole day, not just in one snippet of a class, the students feel much more comfortable with sharing their emotions and feelings and thoughts and ideas throughout the lessons.
Absolutely. That is just such a wonderful outlook. And I'm sure that your students really appreciate having that community and having that trust with you and with each other. It's definitely clear to me from going into your classroom and from hearing you to speak that your students are loving being part of your class and are really enjoying being in the virtual setting. I'm wondering, could you explain what are some of the characteristics of a successful virtual student?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that first and foremost, the biggest thing is having that access to technology and connectivity. That's going to be the first thing that allows that students to succeed. If they have the ability to connect and the technology to do it, then they are set up for success. Along with that, students definitely need to be self-motivated, and they need to have the opportunity to attend those daily lessons and to work within those class times while still having that flexible schedule. So they all kind of work hand in hand with each other. By students being motivated to learn, they're going to get their material in a flexible way, but they're also still going to be responsible for completing that material.
Great. And what would you say to a parent who is wondering what types of activities will their virtual student get a chance to participate in if they were to enroll in Low Country Virtual outside of just the academic setting?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we do have, naturally thinking of virtual school, you're thinking that students going to be sitting there working on their assignments and in front of the screen and doing their work. But in reality, along with that, we have opportunities for students to learn in various different ways, where not only are they completing or seeing their assignments and discussing with teachers online, but they also may be doing some experiments and some things away from the screen. But beyond that, we have tons of opportunities within Low Country Virtual that have students participating, collaborating with each other all of the time. So when we have clubs for students where they can meet on Fridays and discuss and things of their own interest, we've had opportunities for students to have talent shows. And we even have guest speakers occasionally that come in and bring that real world experience for students to understand as well.
Now, I know that you are a host of one of our Low Country Virtual clubs. Would you be able to tell us more about your club?
Sure. I am a host of the Lunch Bunch, and that was one of the clubs that was created in that second quarter because we felt a need for students to have time to, like we said, collaborate and talk and discuss with each other some of their own interests outside of the academic field. So just like they would in a regular classroom or just like they would in their neighborhood with their friends, they have an opportunity to talk and to discuss and to play engaging things that they have common interest in. So this is not only just for 1 or 2 grade levels, this is between all the grade levels in our school, where we have students that love and have a passion for things such as drawing or artwork. Those students will come into the Lunch Bunch and then they have their own individual breakout rooms. In those breakout rooms, we'll go in and manage them and sit and talk and post some discussion questions, and they can have time to talk all about their art. and they can talk and teach other kids and other students how to draw something. Or maybe they're struggling with drawing hands or fingers and they need some support from one of the other students. So it's amazing to see students in second grade and third grade and fourth grade and fifth grade all working together for a common purpose with their own interests.
That really sounds like so much fun. So now, lastly, for a little bit of fun, I want to know, what are some of your favorite ways to engage with your students, maybe like games or apps or virtual experiences?
So within teaching the scope of a whole year, you definitely need to change things up for students and for yourself. The best opportunities for students to learn is when they are taking part of their own learning and they're diving into some of these questions. And I love posing questions and having students work together to understand those answers and how to come to understand those answers. So personally, we use games and experiments in science that the students can go and I'll have them test some things out in nature, walking outside their house, and they'll come back and they'll take some pictures and they'll tell us what they've done with it. But my personal favorite is allowing them to work in their own breakout rooms. And I think that's such a powerful tool because it allows the students to kind of drop their guard of sitting in front of the teacher and allows them to talk and interact with each other on a different level. So when the students are able to have these questions and these big concepts posed to them, they're able to break it down, discuss it with each other. And then what I like to do is I allow them to use all those tools that we've learned how to do from the whole year, whether that's a game or whether that's a project, and then they are able to then create it and use those technology resources to answer those questions.
Matt, clearly you know exactly what you're doing as a teacher and as a virtual teacher. Let me ask you, could you give us some advice for either new teachers or teachers that are new to the virtual world?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things that stuck out to me when joining into the virtual world was a quote, and it said that we're shifting away from the when and where we teach, and we're shifting to the what and how we teach. And that's one of the biggest things for new teachers in the virtual world to understand, that what and how we teach is completely changing. We have the opportunity to engage in all these new ways of thinking for not only learning, but for teaching as well. So when you're coming into the virtual world, you need to think about how you're going to shape the culture of the school. What opportunities can you create? And do you thrive in that change? If the what is changing, what you are teaching is changing, are you able to adapt and to change with it? How you're teaching is definitely going to change. And how will you present that information and material for students in that engaging way? What are those resources that you're going to use that go beyond the typical classroom? So I think when you're coming into the virtual world as a teacher, you need to have an open mind and to expect change and embrace it.
That is such a wonderful mentality to have. Matt, thank you so much for letting us get to know you better and taking a look into your classroom and learning more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you're interested in learning more from Matt, you can follow him on Twitter at Class Novielli. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure to follow Low Country Virtual's Twitter account at LC Virtual School, because we are always sharing the wonderful things that Matt and all of our excellent teachers are doing within our community and for our students. This podcast is written, hosted, edited, and produced by a team of educators from the Low Country Education Consortium. Amy,
Caitlin,
Matt,
and Meg
are proud to bring you
Please Raise Your Virtual Hand.